Hello there, and thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is John Hathaway, and this is episode 5B in my spiritual journey series, where I'm talking about my journey into and out of fundamentalist Christianity and where I'm at today spiritually. Now, if you've been tracking along with this series, in episodes 1 through 4, I went through like my own story of my spiritual journey, kind of like a chronological order of events, where I talked about kind of the things that led me into the changes in my beliefs and my spirituality and things like that. But in the last episode, which is episode 5A, I talked about my own evolution of theology and like the different beliefs that I had and how they changed over time and stuff like that. And we talked about some ideas like annihilationism and universalism and different things like that, which I considered for a short time. And I mean, I still do consider some of those things, but I don't like hold tightly to any of those beliefs as like I affirm any of them as the ultimate truth of reality. I think that doing that is vain and profane. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. And one thing I do want to say, well, before I get into that, make sure that you like this video. If you've been enjoying this series and if you like my channel, the content that you get here, I would appreciate it if you'd hit that thumbs up button. Make sure that you're a subscriber and that you hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. But I do want to say, before I get too far into this, so I think it's important when we're talking about our spiritual beliefs, our theology, and things like that. I think it's important that you don't like nail yourself into a box, or that you don't basically like adopt this view where you have to put God in a box, or you have to put all these different spiritual concepts in boxes and like have them in a textbook, like a school textbook or something like that, or this encyclopedia where you can like define everything and you know all the working parts, the in and outs, and you can define everything to a T of how nature and how reality works and how salvation works and how God deals with us and how man is totally depraved and all that kind of stuff. No, when you like put those things into like in like a systematic theology where you can have them in these neat little categorized boxes and you can easily define them and everything like that, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of like what the Bible is actually intended for. The Bible was intended for living a changed life. It's intended like the gospel and what Jesus came here to do. He came here to transform lives and to get us to be better in touch with reality and to be better at our dealings with other people, how we treat people, how we love people, and things like that. And when you get so just encompassed with having the right theology and the right beliefs and everything like that, it can be very disorienting for you as just in order to help you be a good person. It can just completely mess that up because you're focused on all the wrong things. You're focused on trying to have the correct beliefs when that was never something that Jesus wanted us to focus on. He wanted us to focus on being good people, loving others, following him, following the way. And Christianity was before the followers of Christ were called Christians. They were called followers of the way. And like Jesus, he's called the way, the truth, and the life, and things like that. So it's a way of operating. It's not just a system of beliefs that like a list of do's and don'ts that you have to affirm and that you have to follow, or a bunch of facts about God that you have to affirm. That was never the point. So now that I've gotten off that soapbox, let's talk about some other ideas. So I think I've used the example before in some of my videos about how, like, a lot of times Christians and other religions do this too. It's not just Christians, but many religions, probably especially the more Western version of religions, they create this like Zeus or Santa Claus like model of God, where it's essentially like this old man in the sky with a long white beard and a robe, and he sits on a golden throne in heaven in the clouds and shoots lightning from his fingertips. And that sounds silly when you put it into words, and obviously it is. If you think about it, that is a silly version of God that many of us have, but it is a view of God that many people do have. And you might deny it and say that you don't, but in reality, a lot of Christians do have that kind of a view of God, of just this old man in the sky who, like, he sees you as like, are you in my in group, or are you in my out group? Are you one of my followers? Are you one of my children? Are you someone who follows my commandments? And we're going to see if you go on the nice list or the naughty list, and it really is like that's how a lot of Christians view God. And you need to break away from that model. And I think the whole idea of having a model for God, like something that you can clearly put, like you can define it in this one set way, or like as compare it to this some other figure or something like that, and it's can be easily defined, like all the beliefs about it, then that's just a very profane and vain thing to do. And that is a form of idolatry. Most people, when they think about idolatry, they're just thinking of like worshiping some graven image, making an idol out of like wood or stone or of metal or something like that, and then praising it and worshiping it and things like that. And often probably more like a definitely more subtle version of that, and probably even more dangerous, would be the idol that we create of God in our minds. And a lot of Christians worship this false God that is not even close to the God of the Bible or the God of reality. I want to pose a different idea, a different way to maybe look at God when you're thinking about God. There's a couple different like illustrations I can use, but it's not like this like separate entity of like this old man in the sky that we worship, that's outside of us, and like something like that. But here's a couple different illustrations. So many of you might be familiar with Star Wars, and if you're not, well, basically in Star Wars, you have the good guys and the bad guys. The good guys are called the Jedi, the bad guys are called the Sith, and they both are known for using, like, basically they use the Force. The Force is this power. It's like this, basically this essence that is like made up of just like energy and it's like there's no like really separation between like the two sides, but like you have the light side and the dark side, and that's what basically makes up the Jedi and the Sith. But with the Force, like if you watch these movies in Star Wars, when they talk about the Force, they don't define it as like this separate entity, like this person or this thing that you have to like acquire the Force. The Force, you can't like hold the Force, or you can't like possess the Force for yourself or contain it in a specific way or anything like that. No, the Force can't be contained. The Force is everything and in everything. And I think that's, I'm not saying that is like a perfect illustration for God. I'm not saying that you should like adopt that and like just start thinking of God as the Force, but I think that is a valuable, maybe a better way of thinking about God than just this like separate entity, like a higher spiritual being that's just this old man in the sky giving us this list of do's and don'ts to follow. Some other ways you can think about God, maybe, and even I think like in the Bible you can find some of these examples. Like one of the examples is fire. God in the Bible is compared to a consuming fire, and one thing about fire is that it's not like fire is not like just this inherently evil thing, and it's not just this inherently good thing. Fire is a neutral force, and another thing about fire is you can't replicate it. Like no single flame is exactly the same as any other excuse me, as any other flame. It has many different uses. It can be used to warm up your house. It can be used to cook things. It can be used as like to refine stuff. Like you probably heard of like refining fires, like people use to refine like gold and precious metals and things like that. But then it can also be very destructive. Like it can create forest fires. It can burn down your house. It can blow up your car if your car overheats and catches on fire. So fire is like, it's very unpredictable. You can't just you can't like put it in a box and just say, okay, this is all the things that fire can do. These are the 5 fundamentals of faith about fire. And you can't, and the same thing with like water. You can't list have just a set of beliefs about water, like, okay, these are the 3 fundamentals of the faith about water. These are the only 3 things that water can do. No. Water is like so it can take on many different forms. I mean, it can be frozen, it can be vapor, like it can basically turn into like a gas, a vapor. It can be a liquid, and then it can also it has many different uses, just like fire. You can drink it, you can use it to you can swim in it, you can go surfing on it, but you can also drown in water. Or you could, if you choke on water, like you're drinking water and then you drink it too fast and it goes down your windpipe and you choke on it, it can be harmful, or it can be destructive. So fire and water, they're both like these neutral forces. It's kind of like the Force in Star Wars. The Force isn't made up of just completely like the light side and the things that are associated with good and moral behavior and stuff like that. But the Force is also used by the Sith, and the Force can be used in like many different ways, and it can be destructive, or it can be life-giving and powerful. So I want you to like I said, I'm not telling you to take one of these models or take one of these ideas and to make it your version of God. I don't think you should do that, but it might be a useful way of like getting you to break out of your normal way of thinking about God, if that makes sense. Some other ideas that I'm probably not going to cover fully in this episode, but maybe in some future episodes I'll talk about them a little bit. But I do want to talk about like the idea of like reincarnation. Now, if you look at the other world religions, there is a significant amount of other religions, primarily like Eastern religions, that a lot of them have this view of reincarnation. And it's not something that is limited completely to like Hinduism and Buddhism, but like if you look at even looking at ancient like Judaism, like the Hebrew religion and everything like that in the Old Testament, there are certain passages that you can look at and it seems to be indicating some type of reincarnation or some kind of teaching about that. So that's pretty interesting. We won't go into all the details on that, but But that's something that I would like to maybe do an episode on, is reincarnation. And then also the idea of like simulation theory. If you're not familiar with that, just think of like the Matrix. Basically, like everyone is basically, you're following a program, you're following a script that was given to you, and you're just living kind of like this NPC, this non-playable character or non-player character, if you're familiar with video games. And that's kind of like what Mr. Anderson was in the Matrix before he became Neo, or before, I guess you could say before Neo was like fully awakened. but then like he gets unplugged from the Matrix, and then he sees reality for like what it really is, and he realizes that his whole worldview was like, it was just basically this simulation. And that's basically the idea of simulation theory, is that like we are like these, there's someone else inside of you, the authentic you, that is living this like temporal mortal physical experience in the body that goes by the name of John Hathaway, or whatever your name is. And that like the name that you identify with, and your social security number, your date of birth, and your hair color, eye color, skin color, all the things like that, your favorite sports team, your religion, all those things, basically in simulation theory, it's like that's not really you. That's just, and really, I mean, even if you just think about it in like a psychological sense, those things aren't really you. There is an authentic you that exists inside your soul, and many of us don't even really know who we really are. We just identify with all these things. We think, oh, I am my body, I am my name, I was the name that I was given at birth, I am whatever occupation I have. I'm a banker, I'm a teller, I'm a real estate agent, I'm a police officer, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of like the gist of what simulation theory is, and I think I would like to do an episode on that maybe as well. And then also the idea of oneness. So this is probably a touchy subject for some people, but like I've been really like looking into this this idea of oneness, and you find it in scripture. You can find it in a lot of different places, like especially coming from Jesus. He talks about like how when he's praying to God, he says like, I pray for my disciples that they may be one as we are one, talking to the Father. And then he talks about like how when he's talking to the Pharisees and they're talking about the kingdom of heaven, he says the kingdom of heaven is within you. And he's talking to what we as Christians would say they are lost Pharisees who are on their way to hell, as traditional Christians would say. I should clarify that. But like that doesn't fit with traditional Christian theology, with fundamentalist Christian theology that says like the Pharisees and all those that opposed Jesus were reprobates that were on their way to hell, unregenerate. But why did Jesus say you have the kingdom of God within you? And it just doesn't fit. And I think it's pretty interesting. He also said, whenever he claimed to be the Son of God, which actually, if you like look in the original languages, it didn't really include the word the Son of God. It was basically, he said, I am a son of God. And and then the Pharisees basically got all upset, and he said, and they were calling him a blasphemer and everything like that, saying that and he said, well, what sin did I commit that you are that you're condemning me for? And they said, you're blaspheming God by making yourself equal with God, or you're claiming to be God, essentially. And Jesus said, well, didn't some people in your own scriptures say that you are gods? Or God said to them, you are gods? And anyway, it's interesting stuff. I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but I think that would be an interesting topic to cover in a future episode. Well, if you guys have stuck with me this far, I appreciate you, and thank you for your support in watching this channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all the things to help boost this channel and help it grow. Anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. God bless.